English Naturally podcast with Sarah and Michael.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English Naturally. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Michael. How are you doing today, Sarah?
I'm doing great, Michael. I'm really into this topic today because, well, hobbies are such a huge part of our lives, aren't they?
Absolutely. And speaking of being really into things, did you catch that phrase, listeners? Sarah just used one of our key expressions. We're already sneaking in the good stuff.
Caught me. See, when you're passionate about teaching, it just comes naturally. Get it? Naturally.
Okay, we're starting with the puns early today. But seriously, folks, today we're diving into one of the most common conversation topics you'll encounter in English, talking about hobbies and interests.
That's right. And we're not just going to teach you the boring textbook way to ask, what are your hobbies? Although that's not wrong, we're going to show you how native speakers actually talk about their interests in natural, everyday situations.
We've got a fantastic scenario for you today called the lunch break discovery. It features two coworkers, Chloe and Liam, who are getting to know each other better over lunch.
And after we listen to their conversation, we'll break down all the useful phrases, expressions, and idioms they use. Plus, we'll give you some practical tips on how to keep these conversations flowing naturally.
Before we jump in, let me just say if you've ever felt awkward asking someone about their hobbies, or if you've struggled to describe your own interests in English, this episode is for you.
And here's a little idiom for you. We're going to hit the nail on the head with this topic. That means we're going to get it exactly right. By the end of this episode, you'll be chatting about hobbies like a pro.
All right, let's not beat around the bush. That means let's get straight to the point. Here's our scenario, the lunch break discovery.
Finally. I've been looking forward to this lunch break all morning. How about you, Liam? You seem pretty chipper today.
Oh, yeah. I'm in a great mood. I actually went rock climbing yesterday evening, and I'm still riding that high, you know?
Rock climbing? Seriously? Wow, that's interesting. How did you get into that?
So, funny story, my brother dragged me along to a climbing gym about 6 months ago. I was super skeptical at first, but once I got on the wall, I was hooked. I've been going pretty regularly ever since.
That's so cool. I've always wanted to try that, but it looks kind of intimidating. Is it difficult to get started with?
Honestly, the first few times, my arms were killing me. But the climbing gym I go to is really beginner friendly. They have instructors who show you the ropes, literally. What about you? What do you like to do in your free time?
Well, I'm a big fan of pottery. I've been taking classes at a local studio for about a year now.
Pottery! That's awesome! I've seen those videos online where people make bowls and vases on those spinning wheel things. It looks so therapeutic.
It really is. It's a great way to clear my head after a stressful day at work. There's something really satisfying about creating something with your own hands, you know?
I totally get that. That's kind of how I feel about climbing. It's a fun way to challenge myself, both physically and mentally. How often do you do it?
I try to go at least once a week, usually on Wednesday evenings. Sometimes I go on weekends too if I'm really feeling inspired. What about you with the climbing?
I do it whenever I get the chance, really. Usually twice a week, sometimes 3 if I'm not too swamped with work. Though I have to admit, not as much as I'd like to be honest.
I feel you on that one. There's never enough time for all the things we want to do, right?
Exactly. But hey, that's life. So with pottery, do you mostly make practical stuff like mugs and bowls or more decorative pieces?
A bit of both, actually. I started with simple bowls because, well, you have to learn to walk before you can run, right? But lately I've been experimenting with more sculptural pieces. I even made a really wonky-looking cat last month.
Oh, wonky cat. I love it.
It's so bad, it's good, you know? My sister said it looks like it's having an existential crisis, but I think it has character.
That's the spirit. So what do you like most about pottery?
Oh, definitely the meditative aspect of it. When you're centering the clay on the wheel, you have to be completely focused. All your worries just kind of melt away. Plus, there's always something new to learn. It's one of those skills where you can keep improving forever.
That sounds amazing. I find it really relaxing just hearing you talk about it. Climbing's a bit different. It's definitely more of an adrenaline rush, but there's still that mental focus element.
Yeah, I can imagine. Do you do the indoor climbing or have you done any outdoor stuff?
Mostly indoor for now. I've recently gotten into bouldering specifically. That's climbing without ropes on shorter walls with thick mats below. But I'm hoping to try some outdoor climbing this summer. A few people from the gym are planning a trip.
Oh, that's exciting. Is bouldering the thing where you're solving problems?
Exactly. Each route is called a problem, and you have to figure out the sequence of moves to get to the top. It's like a physical puzzle. Really addicting once you start.
That does sound addictive. I love that combination of physical and mental challenge.
For sure. So, do you have any other hobbies, or is pottery your main thing?
Well, I'm trying to get better at cooking too. I've just started learning how to make proper pasta from scratch. You know, the whole rolling out the dough, cutting it by hand thing.
No way! Homemade pasta! Now we're talking. How's that going?
It's a journey. I mean, my first attempt looked more like thick noodle soup than fettuccine, but I'm getting there. It's one of those things that kind of comes and goes in phases for me, depending on how motivated I am.
I hear you. I used to be really into photography a few years back, but it sort of fell by the wayside when I started climbing. Maybe I'll pick it up again at some point.
Photography would pair so well with outdoor climbing trips, though. You could capture some amazing views.
You know what? You're absolutely right. I didn't even think about that. Maybe I should dig out my old camera.
See? New hobby combo. Unlocked.
I love it. Hey, so this might sound random, but if you ever want to try climbing, I'd be happy to show you around the gym. They have free buddy passes.
Really? That would be awesome. And if you ever want to get your hands dirty, literally, you should come to a pottery class with me. Beginners are always welcome.
That actually sounds really fun. I'm a bit clumsy, though, so fair warning, I might create some truly horrifying pottery creatures.
That's the best part. The wonkier, the better. We can start a collection of existential crisis animals.
Deal. You know, this is nice. We should totally do this more often. I mean, just chat like this. It's easy to get stuck in the work bubble and forget there are actual interesting humans around us.
I completely agree. It's nice to connect over something other than spreadsheets and project deadlines.
Exactly. Well, this has definitely made my lunch break. Same time next week?
Absolutely. And maybe by then I'll have conquered the pasta or at least made something edible.
And I'll try not to fall off the climbing wall.
It's a plan.
Okay, wow, that was such a natural flowing conversation, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And you know what I loved about it? Neither Chloe nor Liam just asked the boring question, what are your hobbies? They eased into the topic naturally, and that's exactly what we want to teach you.
Right, so let's break this down systematically. We're going to look at 5 key areas: starting the conversation, describing your hobbies, talking about frequency, asking follow-up questions, and finding common ground.
Perfect. Let's start at the beginning. How do you naturally open a conversation about hobbies?
Great question, Michael. In the conversation, Chloe opened with an observation. You seem pretty chipper today. Chipper means cheerful and energetic. This is actually a brilliant conversation starter because it's personal, but not intrusive.
Exactly. Instead of just launching into what are your hobbies, she made an observation about Liam's mood, which naturally led him to explain why he was in a good mood, the rock climbing.
This is so important, listeners. Native speakers often approach topics indirectly. We use what I call conversational on-ramps, gentle ways to enter a topic.
I love that metaphor. So what are some other good on-ramps for the hobbies conversation?
Well, we have several options. The most classic and polite is, so what do you like to do in your free time? This is friendly, open-ended, and works in almost any situation.
That's the safe bet. But if you want to sound more casual, you might say, "What have you been up to lately?" This is less formal and suggests you're genuinely interested in the person's recent activities.
Another great one is, how do you usually unwind after a busy week? This is particularly nice because it connects hobbies to relaxation and self-care, which makes the question feel more thoughtful.
And here's one that's especially useful for coworkers or classmates. Do you have any fun plans for the weekend? This often naturally leads into talking about hobbies because people will mention what they're planning to do.
Exactly. Now, here's a pro tip. Notice how all of these questions are open-ended. They can't be answered with just yes or no. That's crucial for keeping the conversation flowing.
Great point, Sarah. And speaking of flowing conversation, let's move to our next section, actually describing your hobbies. All right, so let's say someone asks you about your hobbies. How do you respond in a natural, enthusiastic way?
Well, the level of enthusiasm in your language really matters. Let's look at 3 levels. At the basic level, you might say, I like rock climbing. That's perfectly fine, but it's a bit flat.
Right. But in the conversation, Liam said, "I'm really into rock climbing." The phrase "I'm really into" shows much more enthusiasm and energy. It tells the listener this is something you genuinely enjoy, not just something you do occasionally.
Exactly. And Chloe said, I'm a big fan of pottery. I'm a big fan of is another enthusiastic expression. We often use this for hobbies, but also for music, movies, sports teams, lots of things.
Now, if you want to sound even more passionate, you could say, "I'm passionate about photography." This suggests it's a serious interest, maybe even something you're very dedicated to.
Right, but be careful with passionate. It's quite strong. Use it for hobbies that really are important to you. Don't say you're passionate about watching TV unless you're writing a TV review blog or something.
Good point. Now, what if you've just started a new hobby? How do you talk about that?
Great question. Liam gave us a perfect example. I've recently gotten into bouldering. The phrase, I've recently gotten into, is perfect for new interests.
And you could also say, "I've just started learning how to code," or "I'm trying to get better at cooking." These phrases show you're in the learning phase.
Exactly. And notice the structure. I've just started learning how to verb, or I'm trying to get better at verb plus ing or noun.
Now, here's something really important. Describing why you enjoy the hobby or how it makes you feel. This adds depth to your answer.
Yes. Chloe said, it's a great way to clear my head. And Liam said, it's a fun way to challenge myself. These phrases explain the benefit or the feeling the hobby gives you.
You could also say, "I find it really relaxing," or "It helps me stay active," or "It's a creative outlet for me." These explanations make your answer more interesting and give the other person more to respond to.
Exactly. You're not just listing hobbies like a robot. You're sharing a part of yourself. And that's what makes conversation meaningful.
Okay, so we've talked about how to introduce the topic and describe what you enjoy, but conversations become much more specific and interesting when you talk about how often you do something.
Absolutely. This adds realism to the conversation. When Chloe asked Liam, how often do you do it? He responded with, I do it whenever I get the chance. This is a flexible phrase that suggests you do it more if you could.
Right. And Chloe said, I try to go at least once a week. The phrase "at least" suggests that's the minimum, and sometimes it's more frequent.
Another really common and honest phrase is, not as much as I'd like to be honest. Oh, listeners, we use this all the time. It's relatable because we're all busy, and it's hard to find time for everything we enjoy.
So true, and here's another realistic one. It kind of comes and goes in phases. Chloe used this when talking about cooking. This means sometimes you're really into it, and sometimes you take a break from it.
Yes, and this is perfectly normal. People aren't robots who do the same hobbies with the same frequency forever. Some hobbies are seasonal, some depend on your mood or schedule, and that's fine.
Exactly. So don't feel pressure to present yourself as someone who does everything perfectly and consistently. Being honest and relatable is much better.
Now we're getting to the really crucial part. And honestly, this is where a lot of language learners struggle. They can answer questions about their hobbies, but they don't know how to keep the conversation going by asking good follow-up questions.
This is so important. A conversation isn't an interview where one person asks all the questions. It's a back-and-forth exchange where both people show interest in each other.
Exactly. So let's look at the follow-up questions from our conversation. Chloe asks, "How did you get into that?" This is a fantastic question because it invites a story. Everyone has a story about how they discovered their hobby.
Right, and Liam asked, "How long have you been doing that?" This is a simple but effective question that shows you're interested in their experience level.
Another great one is, "What do you like most about it?" Liam asked this about pottery. It invites the other person to share what they find meaningful or enjoyable.
And if you're curious about trying the hobby yourself, you can ask, "Is it difficult to get started with?" Chloe asked this about rock climbing. This shows you're not just being polite, you're genuinely interested.
And here's my favorite. "I've always wanted to try that. Any tips for a beginner?" This shows strong interest and gives the other person a chance to share their expertise, which most people enjoy doing.
That's a great point. People generally love talking about their passions and sharing advice. So when you ask these questions, you're not just being polite, you're actually making the conversation more enjoyable for both of you.
Exactly. And here's a little idiom. These follow-up questions are what we call keeping the ball rolling. That means keeping the conversation moving forward smoothly, like a ball rolling down a hill.
All right, we've covered how to start the conversation, describe hobbies, talk about frequency, and ask questions. But what really takes a conversation to the next level is finding common ground.
Yes, this is where you build actual connections with people. If you discover you share an interest, you can express that with, "No way, I love hiking too." "No way" is an enthusiastic expression of surprise.
Or you might discover you have a related interest. In that case, you could say, "That's so cool. I'm more of a yoga person myself." This shows you appreciate their interest even if it's not exactly the same as yours.
Exactly. And here's where things get really fun. Making plans together. Liam said, "If you ever want to try climbing, I'd be happy to show you around the gym." This is a friendly, no-pressure invitation.
And Chloe reciprocated with, "You should come to a pottery class with me." When both people offer to share their hobbies, it creates a really nice sense of connection and friendship.
Another casual way to suggest future plans is, "We should totally go hiking together sometime." "We should totally" is very casual and enthusiastic. Or you could say, "If you ever want a buddy to play tennis with, let me know."
I love how these phrases are friendly but not pushy. You're opening the door without forcing anything. It's like saying, "I enjoyed this conversation and I'd be open to hanging out more."
Exactly. And that's really what conversations about hobbies are ultimately about. Not just exchanging information, but building relationships.
Okay, let's talk about some of the colorful language that appeared in this conversation. Native speakers love to use idioms and expressions, and hobbies are a great context for them.
Right. Let's start with some we've already mentioned. We said we'd hit the nail on the head with this topic. That means to get something exactly right or to identify the precise issue.
And I said we wouldn't beat around the bush. That means we wouldn't avoid the mean topic or waste time with unnecessary details.
In the conversation, Liam mentioned the climbing gym would show you the ropes. This is a wonderful idiom because it has a literal meaning. At a climbing gym, they literally show you how to use ropes. But figuratively, to show someone the ropes means to teach them the basics of something.
That's a perfect example of an idiom with dual meaning. Now, Chloe used another common idiom when she said, "You have to learn to walk before you can run." This means you need to master the basics before attempting advanced things.
Exactly. We use this idiom in so many contexts, learning languages, sports, music, careers, you name it. It's all about taking things step by step.
Another expression that came up was when Liam described being hooked after his first climbing experience. When you're hooked on something, it means you're addicted to it in a good way. You love it and can't stop doing it.
Yes, and similarly, he said climbing is really addictive once you start. We often use addictive in this positive sense when talking about hobbies, even though the word usually has negative connotations.
Right. You could say, reading fantasy novels is addictive, or solving crossword puzzles is addictive. It just means you find it so enjoyable that you want to keep doing it.
Here's another good one. When Chloe talked about her wonky cat being so bad it's good, she was using a common English expression for things that are enjoyable precisely because they're imperfect or ridiculous.
Yes, we often say this about movies, art, fashion choices, anything that's technically bad but has charm or humor because of its badness.
And when Liam said his photography hobby fell by the wayside, that's an idiom meaning something was abandoned or neglected over time. It's a gentle way of saying you stopped doing something without making it sound like a big dramatic decision.
These idioms really make your English sound more natural and fluent. But remember, listeners, don't try to cram too many idioms into one conversation. Use them naturally when they fit the context.
Great advice, Michael. Quality over quantity, which brings me to another idiom. Less is more.
All right, Sarah, let's talk about some common mistakes learners make when discussing hobbies and how to avoid them.
Good idea. One big mistake is being too vague or too brief. If someone asks, "What do you do in your free time?" and you just say, "I read," that's technically correct, but it doesn't give the other person much to work with.
Right. Instead, add a little more detail. I'm really into science fiction novels. I've recently gotten into Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. See how much more conversational that is?
Exactly. Another mistake is using the wrong verb forms. For example, saying, "I'm interested in to play guitar," instead of "I'm interested in playing guitar." After interested in, we need a gerund, the ing form.
Good catch. Here are some correct patterns. I enjoy playing, not I enjoy to play. I'm into photography, not I'm into to photograph. I'm good at cooking, not I'm good at to cook.
Yes, the pattern is interested in, good at, into, plus verb ing or noun. Get comfortable with that structure.
Another common mistake is not showing enthusiasm. Remember, if you talk about your hobbies in a flat, monotone way, the other person won't feel excited to continue the conversation.
Absolutely. Your tone and word choice matter. Use enthusiastic phrases like, "I'm really into," "I absolutely love," "I'm a huge fan of." These show genuine interest.
And here's a subtle one, being too modest or too boastful. If you're constantly saying, oh, I'm terrible at it, or I'm not very good at it, it can make the conversation awkward. But if you're constantly talking about how amazing you are, that's off-putting too.
The middle ground is best. You can say things like, "I'm still learning, but I'm getting better," or "I'm pretty decent at it now, but there's always more to learn." This sounds confident, but humble.
Exactly. And one more tip. If you don't have traditional hobbies, don't panic. Not everyone does. Photography or play guitar, you can talk about things like, I love trying new restaurants, or I'm really into listening to podcasts, or I enjoy taking long walks around the city.
Yes, hobbies don't have to be expensive or elaborate. The key is talking about what genuinely interests you, whatever that might be.
Let's take a moment to talk about some cultural aspects of discussing hobbies in English-speaking countries.
Great idea. One thing to know is that in many English-speaking cultures, especially in the US, UK, Canada, and Australia, people are generally very open about their hobbies. It's not considered too personal to ask about them, even with people you don't know well.
Right. In fact, asking about hobbies is often seen as a friendly way to show interest in someone. It's one of those safe, positive topics that help people bond.
However, be mindful of the setting. In a very formal professional context, like a job interview for a corporate position, you might want to keep hobby discussion brief unless specifically asked to elaborate.
Good point. But in most casual settings, at parties, during lunch breaks, in classes, at networking events, hobby talk is not just accepted but encouraged.
Absolutely. Another cultural thing is in English-speaking countries, having diverse interests is often seen as positive. People might have several hobbies, and it's completely normal to say, I'm into rock climbing, pottery, and learning languages.
Yes, and it's also very normal for hobbies to change over time. People don't expect you to have the same hobbies forever. In fact, saying, I used to be into photography, but now I'm more focused on hiking is perfectly acceptable.
Exactly. There's also something called hobby culture in many English-speaking countries, communities built around shared interests. When you discover someone shares your hobby, there's often the assumption that you might want to connect further, exchange tips, or even meet up.
That's why those phrases like, we should go hiking together sometime, are so common. People genuinely use hobbies as a way to form friendships and social connections.
Okay, listeners, let's give you some practice scenarios. I'll describe a situation, and you can pause the podcast and think about how you'd respond. Ready?
Scenario 1. You're at a coffee shop and you notice someone reading a book about learning Japanese. You're also learning Japanese. How would you start a conversation?
Here's what you might say. Hey, I couldn't help but notice your book. Are you learning Japanese? Then, depending on their response, you could say, No way! I'm learning too. How long have you been studying?
Perfect. Scenario 2. A classmate asks you, what do you like to do in your free time? You enjoy playing video games, but you're worried it might sound boring. How do you make it sound interesting?
Great question. Remember, enthusiasm and detail are key. You could say, I'm really into video games, especially open world RPGs. I love the storytelling aspect and getting completely immersed in different worlds. Have you played any games recently?
Excellent. See how adding details and asking a follow-up question keeps the conversation flowing? Scenario 3. Someone tells you they love running marathons. You're not a runner, but you want to show interest and keep the conversation going. What do you say?
Here's an option. Wow, that's impressive. How did you get into marathon running? I've always admired people who can run that far. It seems like such a mental challenge as much as a physical one.
Perfect. You're showing genuine interest and asking a thoughtful question, even though you don't share the hobby. That's what good conversation is all about.
All right, let's do a quick vocabulary recap of all the key words and phrases we've covered today.
For starting conversations, what do you like to do in your free time? What have you been up to lately? How do you usually unwind after a busy week? Do you have any fun plans for the weekend?
For describing hobbies with enthusiasm, I'm really into, I'm a big fan of, I'm passionate about. I've recently gotten into, I've just started learning how to, I'm trying to get better at.
For describing the benefits, it's a great way to clear my head. I find it really relaxing. It's a fun way to challenge myself.
For talking about frequency, I do it whenever I get the chance. I try to go at least once a week. Not as much as I'd like to be honest. It kind of comes and goes in phases.
For asking follow-up questions. How did you get into that? How long have you been doing that? What do you like most about it? Is it difficult to get started with? I've always wanted to try that. Any tips for a beginner?
And for finding common ground, no way! I love too. That's so cool. I'm more of a person myself. We should totally go together sometime. If you ever want a buddy with me, let me know.
Don't try to memorize all of these at once. Choose a few that feel natural to you and practice using them.
Michael, before we wrap up, what's your main takeaway for our listeners today?
I think the biggest lesson is that conversations about hobbies aren't just about exchanging information. They're about building connections. Don't think of it as a language exercise. Think of it as genuinely getting to know someone.
I love that. And remember, listeners, it's okay to be yourself. If you're naturally a bit quirky or funny, let that show. If you're more serious and thoughtful, that's great too. Authenticity is what makes conversations memorable.
Absolutely. And don't worry about being perfect. Native speakers make mistakes, pause, rephrase things, and sometimes struggle to find the right words too. What matters is that you're communicating and connecting.
And here's one final idiom for you. Practice makes perfect. The more you have these conversations, the more natural they'll feel. So get out there and talk to people.
Or, as we like to say on this podcast, speak English naturally.
All right, everyone. It's time for our audience challenge. This is where we give you a fun activity to practice what you've learned today.
Here's your challenge. In the comments below this video, we want you to write a short paragraph about one of your hobbies, using at least 3 of the phrases we taught today.
For example, you might write, I'm really into painting. I've recently gotten into watercolors, and I find it really relaxing. I try to paint at least once a week, but not as much as I'd like to be honest.
See how that uses multiple phrases naturally? We want you to try the same thing. And here's the extra challenge. After you post your comment about your hobby, read through other people's comments and reply to at least one person with a follow-up question.
So if someone says they're into baking, you might reply, that's so cool. How did you get into baking? Or what do you like most about it?
This way, you're not just practicing writing, you're practicing the back and forth of real conversation, just like Chloe and Liam in our scenario.
We'll be reading your comments and responding to some of them, so don't be shy. This is a supportive community where everyone is learning together.
And who knows, you might discover that someone shares your hobby and make a new connection. That would be amazing.
All right, that's your challenge. Write a paragraph about your hobby using at least 3 phrases from today's lesson and ask someone else a follow-up question about their hobby.
We can't wait to see what you're all passionate about. And remember, there are no boring hobbies, only boring ways of talking about them. So use those enthusiastic phrases we taught you.
Exactly. Make your hobby sound as exciting as it feels to you, whether you're into knitting, coding, skateboarding, or collecting vintage stamps. Own it and share it proudly.
And don't forget to hit that like button if you found this episode helpful, and subscribe to English Naturally for more practical English lessons every week.
Yes, we have so many more conversation topics coming up. Everything from making small talk at parties to navigating tricky workplace conversations. You won't want to miss it.
Before we go, let's do one final quick recap. Today, we learned that talking about hobbies is about connection, not perfection. We covered 5 key areas: starting conversations naturally, describing your interests with enthusiasm, talking about frequency, asking great follow-up questions, and finding common ground.
We explored natural phrases like, I'm really into. How did you get into that? Not as much as I'd like to. And we should totally do this together sometime. These aren't just vocabulary. They're the building blocks of friendship.
And we learned some colorful idioms. Hit the nail on the head, beat around the bush, show you the ropes, learn to walk before you can run, and so many more. These make your English sound natural and fluent.
Most importantly, we learned that every conversation is an opportunity to connect with someone. When you ask about hobbies, you're not just practicing English, you're showing genuine interest in another human being.
And that, friends, is what language is really all about. It's not just grammar and vocabulary, it's connection, understanding, and building relationships.
So go out there and have some amazing conversations. Ask people what they're into, share your own passions, and watch how quickly you can turn strangers into friends.
And remember what we always say here at English Naturally. Speak English naturally, and the connections will follow naturally too.
Thanks so much for joining us today, everyone. We're Sarah,
And I'm Michael.
and we'll see you in the next episode.
Until then, keep practicing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep talking.
Don't forget to complete the challenge in the comments. We're genuinely excited to read about your hobbies.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Oh, and one more thing. If you learned at least 3 new phrases today, you're already ahead of the game. Great job.
Michael, we already said goodbye.
I know, but I had to squeeze in one more encouragement.
That's why we're a good team. All right, really goodbye now, everyone.